All right, we are back for weather video number 2. Today we're going to focus on global wind patterns. Global wind patterns. Now again, we understand that hot air rises and cold air sinks. And we can see some of that in these convection cells, these cells that are around the Earth here. And it would make sense that hot air would rise from the equator and cold air would sink in to replace it. One of the questions that is asked a lot is, why do they curve the way that they do? Well, a lot of that has to do with the Coriolis effect. And maybe we can do just a complete video on the Coriolis effect later. Just understand that it's because of the spin of the Earth and the tilt of the Earth, things tend to spin and turn one way in the northern hemisphere and another way in the southern hemisphere. But we don't need to really get into that too deep. It's important, and we'll do a video on that. But we really just want to focus on these 3 global wind patterns. The first, skip those. Hopefully you can watch those at home. The first is the doldrums. The doldrums is an area of very, very calm weather near the equator. And the biggest reason for that is because of how hot it is there, and there's a lot of updraft there. A lot of updraft. Do I have that in there anywhere? Updraft? General upward winds there. And because of that, there aren't a lot of winds blowing horizontally. So you wouldn't want to be stuck on this sailboat in the doldrums. You would want to have another way to paddle your boat or have a motor for the boat or something, because in the doldrums, which is close to the equator, you're not going to get a lot of wind movement. And we're going to see a really good video about that in a Discovery Education assignment that we'll probably have tomorrow that will deal with the doldrums as we watch a young lady set sail from France all the way across the globe and then back to France in an extremely exciting trip that she makes. But she goes through the doldrums, and it's really neat to see that there's really not a lot of wind compared to other places. So that's the doldrums. The doldrums is a place of very, very calm weather. That moves us to the trade winds. Now the trade winds are very important. These are the winds that sailors from over in Europe would take to get over to America and other places to trade. And that's why they're called the trade winds. And they are constantly moving, and they're very consistent. And you can pretty much, understand they're going to be blowing pretty much continuously. So you're not going to be stuck in somewhere like the doldrums. It's not going to be super strong one day and really light the other. They have a westwardly, you can see they're kind of moving this way from Europe, a westwardly path that they blow in. And again, that curve to the west is due to that Coriolis effect, where we have like the spin of the Earth or the rotation of the Earth and the tilt of the Earth, and it causes them to move in that direction. And it's pretty amazing to see the ways that these work. The trade winds are important. We know that they are air movements towards the equator. You see how they're blowing westerly, but they also have a little bit towards the equator. So they're moving to the west, but they're also blowing towards the equator. You would have to definitely chart where you're going on a boat to not get stuck at those doldrums again. And they are very important, but it's not the most important. What I think is the most important are right here, the prevailing westerlies. You do not need to know this. This is just extra facts. Between 30 and 60 degrees latitude. Okay, again, that latitude thing is important, but you don't have to write that down. It's not going to be on the test. These curve to the east. They curve to the east because winds are named from the direction in which they originate. So don't get confused and think, oh, the prevailing westerlies blow west. No, winds are named from where they start. These start in the west and blow towards the east. And I think the most important thing about this, because they start in the west and blow to the east, prevailing westerlies are responsible for moving weather across the United States. That would be Miss Klein trying to call, and I'm going to ignore that right now. Sorry about that. So again, coming back, had to take a break there. Prevailing westerlies are what move weather across the United States and Canada, but it's the United States. That's where we live, and this is why it's important. So let's take a look at that. Here's a map. Well, you can see most of the map of the United States. And you got to understand that we have the prevailing westerlies. Now remember, they don't blow to the west. They come from the west and they blow towards the east. Now these prevailing westerlies are always moving across the United States, and they are moving weather. So let's pretend that we're going to have, like, maybe say this is a really bad storm. Okay, it's a bad storm. Get a little bit bigger there. I can even come in here and put like a lightning bolt in there. There we go. It's a really bad storm. This looks like a 3. That's a horrible lightning bolt, Mr. B. Anyway, we know that the prevailing westerlies are going to move, and it's going to move the arrow too, it looks like. Let me go back. All right, so I fixed it. It's not going to move the entire thing. Anyway, let's say you have a really bad storm. I know that the prevailing westerlies are going to move this storm across the United States towards the east. Now, let's say that these storms cause some massive damage in Tennessee, and I know that they're moving towards the east. We know to go ahead and get ready in North Carolina because we know it's coming towards us. That's a huge factor to know that the prevailing westerlies move weather across the United States from the west to the east. We can track weather systems that are coming. Maybe they're up higher. Maybe this is up here and it's not going to affect us at all. It could be even down lower and come over here, and it's coming out of the waters and it's coming across Texas, and then it's across the Gulf of Mexico, and Florida's going to get a lot of weather then, like a lot of rain. We track weather because we know that these prevailing westerlies are moving weather across the United States. And that is huge. That is a massive thing for us to understand, is that the prevailing westerlies move weather across the United States. I know it seems we just covered like the most important thing in the world, but I was kind of moving up from the equator on up. And so we get to the polar easterlies. Now remember, the polar easterlies start in the east, but move to the west because they are named from the direction in which they blow. Now, this kind of tells you where they're blowing from. They're blowing from the poles. They are polar. They are cold winds. And they move in this direction. They're going to move from the east to the west. These are very, very important. These winds can, I know it says that they're kind of weak. We'll see in a video, the polar easterlies can be kind of vicious at certain times of the year, and sailing in those is extremely dangerous. We just need to know where they are. We need to know the direction that they blow, because that might be one of the most important things that we cover. I'm going to stop there today because I don't want to get too in-depth with the next type of wind that we're going to talk about, because that's an entire lesson in itself, and it's extremely important. I know that I'll be reviewing global winds again before I get into the global air masses, but I want to wait and hold off on that before we move on any further to other things. So we will soon have our assignment in Discovery Education, where you'll get to see, again, a really, really fascinating video of a young lady taking a trip from France by herself, by the way, on a sailboat all the way around the globe and coming back to France. It's an amazing video, but you get to see all of the global winds in effect as we go through that. And we'll have a little small assignment to go with that, and then we'll move on. Again, trying to get my subs up. Smash that like button, sub to the channel, and we will see you again soon.